How's it going, team? Welcome in. So today we are exploring something I have just built in my lovely little survival world here, which is hopefully going to save me some trouble in the long run. So as you saw at the start, I have a very large contraption down in the basement, which I've been working on for, I don't know, the last 3 months or so maybe. On and off, plugging away at it when I have the time. But yeah, so this is basically a little look at what I have constructed down here, how it works, some of the bits in there that I'm quite pleased with. As you may have guessed, this is all built with the Create mod, which fantastic mod, by the way. But yeah, so let's get into it. So the first thing, obviously, is the machine itself, which I haven't quite thought of a better name for, but maybe someone will suggest one. So this basically solves most of my kind of industrial resource worries. Obviously iron being the main one, but also we've got some andesite alloy coming in here, some clay if I want to do bricks or that kind of thing, just the occasional building block and so on and so forth. So I've got all these displaying here on these display boards. So this side's what I've got kind of in the stocks here. So there's some chests behind there that it's measuring. And then these are the big store tanks that are basically for when all my storage overflows, which happens quite frequently. Yeah, so let's take a little tour. So first thing you'll see when you walk inside is just so many levers. And the idea behind this is I wanted this to be almost fully configurable. So that meant that I wanted to be able to select which way different belts were going, what was being produced, what wasn't, all that kind of good stuff. So on this right hand wall here I have a whole bunch of individual controls, so I can perfectly customize what's going on. But when I just want something quick, I can flick on one of these presets. At the moment I've got it rigged for iron because I want more iron, and you can see behind here all of these presets just lead to the same individual configurations on the other side. Cool, so there's that, and we'll have a look at a couple of the circuits behind these in a bit, because I'm quite pleased with a couple of them in particular, but mostly this is just, it turns on a clutch or off a clutch on a particular belt and redirects some materials. It's not super exciting. While I was at it, I figured may as well make a little precision mechanism assembly line, and an XP battery with some kelp. So, as you saw before, we can go up here, we can hop along this way, go up to the employee lift here, head on upstairs, and into this little control room. So this is just like a little break area, place for the observer or the runner of the machine to hang out. With an emergency stop, which we'll look at in a second. But yeah, we've got some chains suspending this thing from the ceiling, as well as the scaffolding you might have seen that's holding it up on the floor. We have our resident sheep technician. Don't ask questions, you won't get answers. And we've got a little fuel line through here, and I'll show you the other side of that in a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through a couple of systems in the test world, so you can get a proper look at what's going on in all of them, and then I'll side by side them with a little showcase of what they're doing actually here and when it's running in survival. This is a 100% survival build. It is all of these resources I hand collected, and it took me a very long time. In fact, as we can see, I have there's too many hours played. 5.87 days. I need something better to do with my life. But yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so showcase number 1 is probably going to be the boiler, because this is what powers everything, and so kind of makes sense to start with this guy. So as you can see, this is currently sort of running. The blaze burners aren't fueled, but that's because I never actually set up the fuel setup properly in this test world. But if we go ahead and grab some blaze kicks just to show you guys what's going on. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So for anyone unfamiliar with how a boiler works, the idea is you pump some water into it, you heat it up, and then it can power some steam engines, which is kind of nice. So I've got, I think it's 3, maybe 4 attached to this guy. Yeah, 4 is the fourth one. These two here power the main contraption. Pretty much all the power is pulling through these. This guy is also powering the main contraption, so it's a 3-engine contraption, and then this guy here is self-powering the boiler. I had a little play with this one to kind of figure it out a little bit. I figured, saw online that it was possible, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to try that. So here's how it works, if I go ahead and stop it. There we go. Okay, so you can see it's done, it's empty, and actually if we look at this, levels at 0, and the power's at 0. It's because there's no water in there. The pumps stopped when I hit that clutch. So, we need to start this thing up again. Now here's the problem. Overstressed. That's okay. So the reason it's overstressed is because it's trying to power this refueling circuitry that I've got here. So that mechanical arm grabs stuff from this buckets of lava from here, which come out of my fueling station in the nether. So if we just go ahead and lock that off while we restart, spin her up a little bit, and you see now it's off again. So these were still heating, but I got just enough power to kickstart this with some water in the boiler, and it's off. It's powering itself really happily. And that gets the rest of the way to powering the machine. So now if I unlock this, everyone's happy, everything works. Yeah, so it's a fairly standard boiler setup, I would suppose, although this is my first ever create contraption, so I actually have no idea. But that's part 1. Okay, so the next bit we're going to look at is something I was quite proud of myself for managing to actually fit in here, because it's all really quite compact, which is flow circuits. And actually the survival version has quite a few more of these, because I realized as I was building it I should probably add one for all the storages rather than just one. So there are 2 kinds of overflow circuits in here. The first one deals with overflows on the production line. So if one of these conveyor belts gets all filled up, gets jammed, terrible day, it will redirect the conveyors so that they flow off into the big storage tanks here. The way that one works, if we go and have a quick look, is on the other side of these is our main conveyor belt. And these smart observers are all reading whether there's something on that main conveyor belt. Now, if they all return yes, there's only 3 segments to that particular section of belt, so we're full. We can't accept any more. We don't want to clog up everything else behind us if we don't have to. So, I have a 3-signal AND gate here, and send some power to a trigger to say, hey, turn this belt on, and take everything that was about to hit this section of 3 into the stores. So I've got a couple of them floating around, so there's one for that sand section, and there's one for this kind of main line that runs through here. The other kind of overflow I have is on the store tanks themselves. So these ones, as you can see, I've got a little bit of lava and a little smart chute. So the idea being that when this is full up, it'll emit a signal strength of about 15. Exactly 15, actually. Trigger this little redstone link, and that redstone link will activate the smart chute here. So it'll say, yep, you can dispense stuff, and it will get rid of some, not much, but enough so then to no longer be a signal strength of 15. So that we never get a clog up, even if we overfill these reservoirs, which can hold like a lot of stuff. But yeah, so that in theory means that this thing should always be able to run pretty happily. It shouldn't ever overflow and clog everything up. Okay, the next thing I want to take a look at is my direction changer for my belt. So I was really pleased with coming up with this one. And it took a few goes. So originally I was going to go with a T flip-flop, then I went with a hopper clock, like I was coming up with so many ideas. But the idea being, I have a little system here. So this is a cobblestone generator, this is also a cobblestone generator. Now, they'll both make gravel, and there are two ways that gravel can go. So I can either take this output, feed it into the gravel tank, and then the gravel gets washed here. Or I can take this output and chuck it down here into the main production line, and it'll get crushed into sand. It's the same deal with this guy. So, the question being, well, okay, that sounds great, why are we even talking about this? Well, what if you wanted to make, like, tons and tons and tons of gravel, and then keep it, right? This is my gravel storage. Well, I'd want to route all the gravel that this is making into gravel storage. But I wouldn't want to route any of this that way, right? So I want the belt to flow what it's doing. Now, I want it to flow to the left. But if I want to make loads and loads of sand, or loads and loads of quartz, for example, which is further along this line, then I want all the gravel that's in here to be coming out this way to get crushed into sand. So I needed an alternator, basically. I needed a way to switch things around here. And this is what I came up with. So it's this little pink wool circuit here. Basically what's going on is I have a little hopper clock. The idea being, if this redstone signal wasn't here, these guys would really happily just go for it. They would absolutely feed into each other and keep doing the hopper clock. But what this has done is it's locked this item in place, which means I can read comparator signals out of each hopper. Now, if the comparator sees, hey, there's an item in this hopper, it'll output a redstone signal, which I amplify with a repeater, and turn on this clutch here. So this is pulling power from the rest of the machine, and it's rotating, as you can see, clockwise. But because the clutch is here, it's not going to rotate the belt clockwise. This is passively turning from the other side. This guy, on the other hand, not rotating any power, so clutch not active, spinning the belt anti-clockwise into the gravel storage. Wonderful. If I go ahead, go down to my little control room here, and flick the switch, alternate aux feed direction. Okay, it turns out if you don't turn the things off when you should, it's not going to work. Okay, so now if I alternate the aux feed direction, if I go ahead and flick that, instantly we get a little change just to let us know which way the thing's going. So it was going gravel to iron, because that was the direction it was in. It was feeding to the iron direction. Now it's going the other way. So if we go up here and have a look, what's happened is that has triggered this piston, so it's retracted. It has locked the item in this hopper instead. We get a comparator out from this way. This clutch is now on. The other one's free to move, and so it's rotating the other way. Okay, next step, the fuel line, and we're not going to see a ton here, but the idea being, it's fairly simple. Again, I think this is probably standard for boiler setups. So you have buckets full of lava. They come through here, mechanical arm goes ahead, picks those up, fuels the blaze burners with them, and then deposits those empty buckets into this little chute. They go on the conveyor all the way over here. They get popped in the dispenser and they get fired through the portal. Now, on the other side of the portal, the idea here is that these buckets will all come round. They'll go along here and get filled up by this, whatever these are called, fluid dispenser, which in turn is being filled by this hose pulley that I've deposited into the lava here, drawing an infinite lava source. Then those are going to get sent back through the portal, and when they do, they will pop out right here. So we get a nice little automatic refill situation. Now, on the nether side, there's something pretty cool I'm going to show you, which I will do in survival. Okay, so welcome to my remarkably undeveloped nether. But this is what I wanted to show you. That right there, that is the refueling system. So you saw the little conveyor on the other side, but basically what happens here is that's one portal, that's the other. Those two ends of that obsidian shelf. They go on through and it's a nice little kind of ship construction. I'm quite pleased with that one. I think it looks nice. I think it fulfills what I want it to do really well. And I may or may not have died several times building that one, but that's okay. We must all make sacrifices for our art. Okay, the last kind of major system to show you that I'm quite pleased with is my Minecart kind of retrieval system. So in the actual thing, which you'll see on the screen in a minute, these hoppers lie just below all those depots that you saw that hold my accessible resources from the machine. And I'd like to be able to get those without walking to the end of my ginormous hallway, so I decided, well, I'll make a little minecart run. Now I know, you know, conveyor belts, this could have been done way more easily, I'm sure, but I wanted to do a minecart. I thought it would be cool, and I reckon it is. So here's what happens. I was just about ready to give out, and I discovered a really cool trick. If you get not some muddy mangrove roots, just some mud. So this right here is basically what I've got in the survival world. We have a line of mud with some rails on top of it, some rails down the bottom, and then eventually it will go to those hoppers. So mud's a really cool block because it's not a full block. It's kind of just below a full block. It's a bit like soul sand. The other reason it's a really cool block is you can put rails on it and it's not a full block. Both of those turn out to be pretty useful. So if I go ahead and get a minecart and some levers so I can power this thing. Okay, so this is the default state. The minecart is really happy, it's going to run along those rails and it's just going to keep going, right? There's nothing to stop it. It'll just go right off the end. That's fine, that's okay. But if I want to pick up any of these, how am I going to get to it? And this is where a couple of neat things kind of come in. So step one, you can move you can move rails with pistons, not pistons with rails. That would be interesting. That's great, I hear you say, but still, why do we care? And there is a reason why we care. It's because of this. If I retract a rail, what's going to happen? The minecart's going to derail, right? Absolutely, that's what it's going to do. Minecarts do a really cool thing when they derail on something that's slightly less than a full block. I'm going to push it. Not that way. I'm going to push it the other way. Hey, look. How did I get that? If you watch that one back a little bit more slowly, you can see that the minecart is derailing on that mud block and then instantly teleporting to that bottom track. Now, I don't know why this happens, but I do know that it does happen. It's something that happens with anything that's not a full block. If you derail a minecart over something that's not a full block, and right underneath it there's a rail, the minecart will teleport to that rail and continue on as if nothing had ever happened. Which is really useful when you want to drop something in a precision 1x1 space, like I do. So that kind of saved my little minecart plan. And from there, it's pretty simple. So instead of unpowered rails, I've got some controller rails underneath the hoppers that let it pick up about 16 items before it returns. Alrighty, well, I think that probably brings us to the end of the video. So I hope you enjoyed. And if you've got any tips, questions, queries, chuck them down in the comments below. I'd love to see what you think. And yeah, if you feel like sticking around for the next one, I'll see you then. If you're going off into the wilderness, then I wish you a good journey. So, see you next time.